The decision of the Business Committee is a very, very clear democratic reiteration of the integrity of these institutions and of the need and the wish for these institutions to continue the work which we were all elected to do on behalf of citizens in this state and across this island. I obviously am very, very conscious of what I consider to be a huge mistake when, following the dreadful killings, the murders of 2 citizens in the city of Belfast, that matter, that investigation was brought into these political institutions. That investigation is the business of the PSNI, and it should be allowed to go on with that business. There's also the issue of outstanding matters dealing with the past, parades, the ongoing business of the unfulfilled agreement of Stormont House, and of course budgetary issues, because we want functioning, workable, sustainable institutions with a workable budget. So all of us in those talks, and we need real talks, not pretend talks, not play acting, not stunts, not grandstanding, but real talks to crunch down on all of those issues on behalf of the citizens of this state and across this island. And finally, I hope that both governments support the integrity of these institutions and make it clear that they will not suspend the institutions.
Mr. Adams, you know that Peter Robinson has said that if his village does not suspend, he will be resigning by the end of the day, so we're not out of the woods yet.
Well, I can't speak for Peter Robinson, and he wouldn't expect me to, and you wouldn't expect me to, but I think I am expressing not just the voice of Sinn Féin, but of citizens who want to see the future, which is based on everybody being treated on the basis of equality, on the politicians here doing the work that we're very well paid to do, and ensuring that these institutions work and function for everyone. So the challenges, we don't underestimate them, we don't seek to minimise them, but we also believe that all of these problems can be resolved if there's a political will to do so. And as Mark McGuigan has said consistently, and you might want to say something now, what's required here now is calm, positive, measured leadership which rises above whatever electoral or other inter-party rivalry which sometimes intrude on the business of this institution.
Let's face the reality. As a result of the vote just taken, democratic vote, which upholds the integrity of both the Good Friday and the St Andrews Agreement, this decision, I think, is the proper decision. But let me point out that during the course of the St Andrews negotiations, the Democratic Unionist Party argued for a removal of the ability of the British government to invoke suspension on these institutions. So I have to say I do think that it's a bit ridiculous that we're now getting an argument that the British government should change effectively the St Andrews Agreement to bring about the suspension of these institutions. That, in my opinion, would be a huge mistake and a betrayal of previous negotiations that we've all been involved in. This is a time for leadership. Mike Nesbitt, in my opinion, as leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, has shown no leadership. He has attempted to use the awful, despicable, appalling murders of 2 people by criminals to effectively destabilise these institutions. And of course, if it comes to it, and I hope it doesn't come to it, but I fear that it might, the Democratic Unionist Party resign their seats in this executive. That would be very poor leadership, in my opinion. And I think the public out there, as they saw, even though we didn't succeed in the Haas talks took place against the backdrop of these institutions up and running. Talks took place at Stormont House against the backdrop of these institutions up and running. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that we can't have a very determined and serious negotiation to find a way forward in Stormont House, to find a way forward on how we all stand together against violence and criminality, as I have done repeatedly over the course of the last 8 years, and stand against those murderers who were responsible for these 2 killings. Isn't it ridiculous that criminals, low-life criminals who murdered 2 men, have the ability to bring down democratic institutions that I believe do have the overwhelming support of the people of Ireland and indeed the people of the North? So whatever will happen over the course of the next number of hours will happen. We will have to deal with that. We will approach all of these matters in a very positive and constructive way. But I reiterate the point. The previous agreements that all of us signed up to, including the unionist parties, particularly at St Andrews, have to be maintained, and that places a huge responsibility on both governments also to show leadership at this time.
Sinn Féin stands on our mandate. The people who vote for us have the right, the entitlement to the same respect as the people who vote for every other party or individual who stands for election. They are not responsible, no more than we are responsible for criminal elements out there. So let's be very, very clear about this. Similarly, in terms of Mark's question, is there any point in having an election? Is there any point in having an election? There has to be an election if the institutions fail. You can't have this ambivalence creeping into the media. Is there a point in having an election? There has to be an election. And here we are, as people who have a mandate to be here, reaching out the hand of friendship to our unionist partners, prepared to knuckle down, despite all that's been said, despite all that's been done, to deal with all of these issues. And that needs to be the position that everybody has here. Face up to it, don't walk away from it. And you know who will be best served by these institutions coming down? Those who are against equality, those who are against harmony, those who are against peace, and those who killed Kevin McGuigan. That's who will benefit. As Martin has said, that they have the power to bring down these institutions.
If Theresa Bitter suspends the institutions, I can just add, if Theresa Bitter suspends the institutions to try and facilitate 4 to 6 weeks of talks, will Sinn Féin resign or talk?
Well, we'll deal with that if that happens. But let me make it very, very clear. That, as I said earlier, is above our pay grade. It's illegal. You would have to bring in new legislation to do it. It's a contravention of an international agreement and subsequent agreements, of which the Irish government is co-equal guarantors. So there is no space or room for the British Secretary of State to do any of that. If we are to make this fledgling, difficult, but still better than war institution work, if it collapses because people resign, then the only way to move forward is on the basis of the rules which we agreed, which means we go into an election. And we don't want an election, by the way. We're already preparing for an election in the South, but we will face up to that, as Martin has said, positively and on the basis of our record.
The other aspect of this is that, as you well know, I spoke to both David Cameron and Andy Kenny in the course of the last week, and both of them told me that they were not in favour of the suspension of these institutions. I expect them to keep their word, because in keeping their word, they keep the integrity of the St Andrews Agreement.
So are you accepting that this Assembly, as we know it, it's over?
Well, I would hope that the DUP would not resign their seats. I fear that they will, now given the announcement that they made yesterday. And if they do resign their seats, then effectively the life term of this Assembly is over, and we are faced into what has to be the next step, and that is elections to a new Assembly. But it's further complicated by the fact that there are still outstanding issues to be resolved around Stormont House and around how we can get every party in this Assembly to stand foursquare against criminals who are involved in murder in our society.
Is a collapse really better than a suspension, though? And how difficult will it be, given the way this Assembly is potentially ending, will it be to get the Assembly back up and running again?
Well, however difficult it may or may not be, our will, and I'm sure the will of the vast majority of people who would have a vote in any subsequent elections, is for us and others to come in here and do the work that they would elect us to do. And let us all take pause here, all of you. and some of you are long-seasoned journalists. How did we get into this situation? How did we get into this predicament? Isn't it interesting? Reflect back on it, that 2 people were killed in the city of Belfast and not morphed into a crisis here in the institutions. I have grave concerns at how all of this not only was contrived, but how it was exploited. Now, having said all of that, we have a job of work to do to make it work. There are some of you here who, in the past, doing your journalistic jobs, were rightly sceptical about our ability to make various agreements with what were our opponents, and they became our partners. We also have to factor in that there's a rump of opinion here, quite right-wing, quite fundamentalist, it's quite sectarian, it's quite bigoted, and it doesn't want to see the type of dispensation that the vast majority of people want to see. And how you deal with that is democratically and peacefully by seeking a vote and then using your mandate positively.
Peter Robinson says if devolution disappears, it could be a decade before it returns here. Do you share that?
Well, if he's right in that assumption, then why is he resigning?
Okay, folks, thank you.